Morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webcast. Our topic is Governing from the Cloud, and we're here with Pierce County, Washington, and the City of Orlando, Florida. Today's webcast is brought to you by Workday and Governing Magazine. My name is John Meary. I'll be your moderator today, and if you can view our first slide, you can see that we've got an outstanding panel with us here today to talk about their experiences and their jump into the cloud. We've got Gary Robinson, Director of the Pierce County Budget and Finance Department, Linda Jarrell, Director of Information Technology for Pierce County, Rebecca Sutton, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Orlando, and Mike Duffield, General Manager for Workday Government and Education. So it's a great panel, a lot of really great information that we'll share with you today. But before we tell you a little more about the topic, I wanted to remind folks that this webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. You can actually participate in a Q&A session by typing questions in. You can actually ask questions at any time, so just type your question in the Ask a Question text area next to the video window and then click the Submit button. At this time, we recommend that you disable your pop-up blockers. You will need those to ask questions, or you will need pop-ups to ask questions. There are also a number of widgets at the bottom of your screen. Excuse me. During today's webinar, you can connect with your peers via LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook to share information that you're hearing. If you'd like to share that message that way, please use the hashtag GovLive if you can to connect with your peers across the governing platform via Twitter. If you have any technical problems as you're listening to the presentation, problems with your media player or so on, you can select the Preferences link under the video window and then choose a different media player. If you have any other problems, we have a webcast help guide that you can get to by clicking on the Help button in the video window. You can also use the Question tab to type a technical or audio question. We have operators and folks standing by to help you with those things as they come in. So let me tell you, if you haven't joined us here before, just a quick intro to governing. We like to say that governing is really the journal of record for the people who really administer government agencies around the country. We connect America's leaders by providing intelligence, analysis, information, and really best practices about the best folks that are running government agencies across the board. There's a lot of services and functions within government that are common across a lot of different types of entities, things like accounting, HR, finance, and so on. And so those are some examples we'll talk about today. Our topics for today are a few. We'll hear primarily from Pierce County and the City of Orlando about the challenges they faced with technology. Technology can be a really powerful tool. It can also hold us back. And so there were some challenges that they both faced with technology that were keeping the organizations from reaching their full potential. They'll talk a little bit about that. You've heard a lot of discussion about this notion of software as a service or cloud-based software. The folks on the line today will talk about how they decided to move there, what that meant for their organization, why that was right for them. They'll talk a little bit about the benefits they hope to achieve by moving into the cloud, and then some insights into procurement that can help your team make this same type of transition if it looks good to you. So a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to introduce our first couple speakers here from Pierce County. So they'll be co-presenting two folks from Pierce County. Gary Robinson is Director, as I mentioned, of the Pierce County Budget and Finance Department. Gary began his career as a member of the committee staff of the Washington State House of Representatives and then the Senate. Next joined the administrative staff of the Washington State Parks and Recreations Commission before serving as the Assistant Director and Deputy Director of the Washington State Office of Financial Management. Before assuming his current position, Robinson was the Chief Information Officer as well as the Director of the Washington State Department for Information Services and the Chief Financial Officer for the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services. He's been a member of the executive committees for the National Association of Chief Information Officers and the National Electronic Commerce Coordinating Council, currently serves as an advisory board member for the Information School at the University of Washington. So a great set of experiences across finance, technology, the intersection, and the interplay of both. Co-presenting with Gary from Pierce County is Linda Jarrell. She's the Director of Information Technology for the county. She's been working in the technology field for more than 30 years, and in that time she's held a number of leadership positions as an executive, GIS manager, senior consultant, and a project engineer. She did undergraduate work at the University of Florida and University of Tennessee, has a bachelor's in civil engineering. She's held senior positions in a number of companies, Intergraph Corporation, UGC Consulting, and TVA. Regularly presents papers at industry conferences and is a member of the University of Washington Tacoma Technology Advisory Board. Linda brings her depth of experience, expertise, technical knowledge, and management to her current position, where she's leading an innovative team of IT professionals who build and support over 400 software systems, including open source platforms and cloud technologies. And I bet we will hear a lot about that innovation here today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Gary and Linda to tell us about their experiences from Pierce County. Thanks for joining us.
This is Gary Robinson, and I'll first give a view of Pierce County and then also describe some of the business reasons why we chose to move toward a solution that we're now implementing, which is software as a service and Workday. Pierce County is the second largest county within Washington State. We have 22 incorporated cities, with our largest city being Tacoma. Our total population is just over 800,000, but what I think is important about our population mix is that half of that population lives in unincorporated urban areas. So the services that we provide as a county are, in many cases, urbanized services related to public safety and utilities. Land area for the county is very vast, about 1,800 square miles, and we really appreciate that we go from sea level in Puget Sound to Mount Rainier being within our county boundaries. Just for reference, we're south of Seattle, about 35 miles, and about 30 miles north of Olympia. As we began evaluating the direction that we wanted to head in for information technology systems, we evaluated our current systems based upon business case analysis. One of the areas that we specifically looked at was our annual operation and maintenance cost for our legacy systems. And you'll see on the lower part of this slide, we identified potential savings of just under $2 million by moving to a new platform. Our goal was to eliminate some of the complex older technology, which we developed over years and have implemented a number of workarounds, and move to a more modern, flexible system. That would result in a reduction of system integration points and, for us, points of failure, and reduce many of the add-ons that we've accumulated over the years to perform functionality through spreadsheets and other collection systems. And one of our other goals was, of course, to allow staff to work on a system that could be easily maintained and have those that are working within human resources and payroll be able to perform functions without a lot of involvement of information technology staff. The business opportunities that we looked at were evaluated in 2009, and in large part, this evaluation focused upon our time entry, fixed asset, position control systems that had been running in a legacy mainframe environment. What we saw as an opportunity is move toward a centralized HR payroll, recruiting, and time attendance systems, which also would include features of employee self-service and manager self-service. We wanted to move toward automation of workflow, our personnel actions, and time reporting and approval. Also wanted to have robust reporting that we could have available to our staff in standardized format and ad hoc queries, and improve, as I stated earlier, our integration so that we can reduce the number of system interfaces that we've had to maintain in recent years. A key for us from a financial perspective was to create a position-based budgeting and management system, and of course build capacity that would enable us to grow our business and services in the future. On the bottom part of this slide, we also have a chart that shows the process that we've been going through to work on our replacements by each of the modules that's identified on that lower part of the chart. Within Pierce County, we, like many other jurisdictions, have set goals that we are utilizing to make all of our investment and management decisions. Highlighted on this slide is how we believe our new Workday solution meets those goals of the county. One of the key goals is financial stewardship, and we have concluded that a software as a service implementation is going to enable us to reduce our cost and reduce support for upgrades, backup, and recovery. We also, as I acknowledged earlier, have identified cost reduction opportunities by moving away from our legacy human resource management system and really getting away from many of the redundant tracking systems that we've implemented over the years. For talent management, we wanted to improve our productivity, both for employees directly and provide manager self-service. And then on service delivery, have these functions be available to our staff in an online fashion for which they'd be able to interact with the system directly. Another important aspect of our move was to be attentive to internal controls and audit, and we believe the solution that we're moving forward with meets all of our objectives in this area. A final item that is a real priority for us within the county and certainly within the Northwest is to ensure that we are fostering a livable community with all of our decisions. And this decision to move forward with a SaaS solution, we believe contributes to that livable community goal by ensuring that we're making effective use of energy, and think that this is a good step in supporting that livable community goal. I'll now turn it over to Linda, who will begin to describe our selection process.
Good morning. This is Linda Jarrell. And I think what's interesting about our project is we did a very diligent process on selection and really were very mindful of all of the requirements that would go into this system. We inventoried and worked with over 24 or all of our county departments. We did a very rigorous analysis of requirements. We also enlisted the help of a consultant that had a great deal of HR payroll experience to help us develop the specifications and ultimately the request for proposal. We talked with managers, and we did a great deal of IT architecture design work to ensure that we understood clearly what we needed in the way of requirements. What we found is, after documenting all of our work and building this requirements document, we then built from that our request for proposal. I'm sure that the vendors, when they first saw it, panicked because we had a long list of things that were going to be required in this procurement. We did receive 8 responses. We shortlisted 3 vendors, but that wasn't the end of the story. The vendors were required to come in for evaluations, and they were 3-day scripted demonstrations of their products. So every vendor was required to move through the same script to show us the same information. It was a whole lot of time, and we did also include in that process not only our core team, but also users from the department, so they could actually see firsthand what the new system would look like. From those presentations, we selected a vendor, 2 vendors, to do deep dives on their technical approach, where we actually looked at their architecture, what the product was built on, how it was coded, and of course the underlying database and so on. From that, we then selected a vendor and did on-site, once again, configuration conversations so we would be able to understand how this product would be implemented over time. And I think if you're in local government, have seen this sort of slide about your system architecture, and you understand how difficult sometimes implementing a legacy system, replacing a legacy system, all the interconnection points, all of the things that need to be integrated. So our impact on our organization and on our IT infrastructure really required a solution that would be easily integrated with our other databases and systems, a usable API, an ability to understand what the upgrade schedule would be for the product, because as you can see in this diagram, if one system upgrades, the impact is on at least a minimum of 4 or 5 other systems. So we really were looking at our total cost of ownership. Our total cost of ownership was not just the procurement and the implementation of the system, but how that system would perform over time and what those associated costs would be, and that cost analysis was a very large part of our decision process. So our selection was for Workday. We were very pleased with our selection, and the whole team is very excited. We selected a software as a service, but I have to tell you, as we were going through our procurement, it was not a desire to select software as a service or not select software as a service. We definitely made this decision based on functionality. Of course, we looked at things such as security, but we are very familiar with software as a service now and have a number of large systems in place and have been successful with them. So software as a service doesn't scare us, and we were more interested in the robust functionality within Workday for human resources, payroll, benefits, and time entry. We were also very excited about their update and upgrade schedules, how that process takes place, how we would have an ability to really lower our costs over time and lower our effort. Our IT staff is very busy, and going through time-consuming updates on products is an enormous cost to the organization. So we were very encouraged with how updates are handled. The software, of course, is secured with SAML and has integrations for Cornerstone and NeoGov, which are tools that we use as well. I think what we were also pleased to see was a very active user community. We feel strongly that that's a good way to learn, share best practices, and we're looking forward to participating in the user community when we are in production. And I think what we were also looking forward to is the fact that our systems are continuing to evolve, and we are at a place where many of Pierce County's systems are being replaced and modernized, and the full suite of modules and systems that Workday provides would give us a potential growth path forward. Go ahead. So our benefits that we're expecting to see from our implementation, we are in our architect stage right now. We have successfully passed our plan stage. We're in architect. We do plan to deploy October 1, and at that time we'll have modern systems. We're looking forward to an improvement in staff productivity. The user interface is what really had the teams excited. It was so intuitive that we really believe that our training time on this system will be much less than other products that we have implemented. We are hoping to improve the visibility of employee information across our organization. That is something that managers in every department have asked us for over the years, and we could not provide, or we had to provide in reports. And so they're looking forward to that live interactive data. Data quality is something that will be a huge benefit for us moving forward, and I think anybody that's migrated to a new platform knows that as we're doing our architect stage, we're finding errors in our data. And so this is giving us an opportunity to clean up our data as we make this transition to the new platform. And of course, we're looking forward to position control. So we feel we have a great start on an exciting new technology. It is software as a service, and we are finding it very easy to implement. And you are welcome to come for a visit if you would like to see our progress to date, or once we have gone live in production. I think it's always good to share best practices, and of course, county government is a bit unique in their requirements, and we can share with you how we have implemented portions of the system and transition to the Workday technology. And just a little plug for Pierce County and our Chambers Bay Golf Course. We are the site for the 2015 U.S. Open, so come visit us and come see the tournament as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda and Gary. What a great perspective. And I think, there's so many folks that have logged in today. One of the common questions we've gotten already is whether people can get access to some of these materials. You will get an email sent to the address you used to register for this event that will have a link to a full archive that will include all these materials as well as the slides and so on. Some folks have asked about getting copies of RFPs and documents that folks worked on. We'll pose a few of those questions to our panelists at the end, but it's so exciting to see that even so far people are very interested in what's happened in Pierce County and the direction you're taking. So we'll move on to the City of Orlando to hear a little bit from Rebecca. Let me tell you a little more of her background before she starts. Rebecca Sutton is a CPA. She was appointed Chief Financial Officer for the City of Orlando on December 5th, 2005. She was instrumental in creating the financial plan for building 3 new entertainment venues in downtown Orlando, combining the financial resources of the state, Orange County, and the City of Orlando, as well as the private sector to fund the price tag of over $1 billion. So she's not unfamiliar with big projects and how to do finance in the public sector. She was instrumental in developing an agreement with Stanford Burnham Institute for the construction of a research site that served as the anchor for the city's medical city area. Before joining the city, she served the state of Florida as its Deputy Chief Financial Officer from September 2002 to December 2005, and as Deputy Secretary and CIO for the Department of Management Services. Prior to her service with the state, Ms. Sutton worked for American Management Systems, AMS, which is now CGI, implementing ERP projects for large state and local governments. So experience on both sides of being in government and in companies that do this type of thing for a living. As CFO, Ms. Sutton oversees the administration of 3 defined benefit plans, 1 defined contribution plan, 2 tax-deferred savings plans, and a post-employment benefit trust. In addition to her work with the city, she serves as a board chair for the Sunshine State Governmental Financing Commission and also serves on the 9th Judicial Circuit Grievance Committee. She has 3 children and 9 grandchildren who live in Dallas, Texas. And as an Austinite myself here, I certainly can recommend the Lone Star State as well. So without further ado, Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences and your adventure?
Very good. Thank you so much for that nice introduction, John, and thanks to the audience members for their interest in Orlando's Workday adventure. Almost everyone has heard of Orlando and identify us as the happiest place on earth. And while we embrace this at the city, we have more to offer than just being the theme park capital of the world. Our city of 250,000 also has created a medical research complex that contains the East Coast headquarters for Stanford Burnham, a medical school, facilities for graduate and postgraduate biological studies for 2 Florida universities, a leading-edge children's hospital, Nemours, and a large, soon-to-open regional VA medical complex. Additionally, we're a center of development for computer simulation of all kinds, including flight simulation, gaming, and motion capture, as well as interactive arts higher education. From all of this, our city organization has developed a culture of innovation. Our constant challenge here at the city is that our expenses are increasing at rates exceeding inflation, but our revenues are shrinking. Property tax reform enacted by our legislature in 2007 and followed by a series of further constitutional initiatives have eliminated our ability to truly recover from this recession due to revenue growth caps that may or may not track to inflation and growth. And this requires that we find efficiencies in our operations that will make current recurring revenue sources available to address our top priorities. So we focused on one-time investments in tools, training, and technology that create cost reductions long run. Our current ERP systems at the city consist of a 27-year-old, very dependable, but antiquated HR payroll system with, believe it or not, green screens. We're on the current release, but this software is updated only for tax compliance in the technical environment. Our financial system is a 13-year-old version 8X JDE Enterprise One system. We were sold several modules that have never been implemented, and the system is heavily modified, which has made the upgrading of the system to current releases very expensive and difficult. Our version will no longer be maintained after 2013, according to the latest information from Oracle. Because of our emphasis on using tools, training, and technology to make us more efficient here at the City of Orlando, our technology strategy embraces a cloud-first when applicable philosophy. This means for non-mission critical systems, we'll look to cloud solutions to lever our scarce resources in technology. Now, to us in HR and financial, it may not initially feel really good to be a non-mission critical operation, but it is hard to argue that our police and fire communications and dispatch systems are those systems which keep our transportation arteries open and moving, as examples, are at least more mission critical than we are. So we look for true SaaS, not faux SaaS. Now, what does this mean? True SaaS is provided by the software company. Both the subscription as well as the technical environment are provided by your software company, and your subscription payment goes directly to them. All users are on a single code line in a multi-tenant environment, except for those very brief periods that users are being transitioned to the next release. This software is highly configurable to eliminate the need for modification, since none can be done, and it's easily implemented, usually in a fraction of the time of traditional ERP, and the product roadmap provides for frequent updates and upgrades which are entirely implemented by the software company, with new features implemented in the off position so users can control the timing and manage the change locally. These distinctions are very important because these are the features that provide the value proposition in going to SaaS. A less expensive alternative, but always an up-to-the-minute solution. Our considerations in moving to a multi-tenant SaaS solution include examining the security provisions to be sure that our information was maintained properly in accordance with our laws and regulations, as well as other agencies that have regulations that impact our technological environment. We wanted a provider that had significant multi-tenant SaaS experience with many satisfied clients. And finally, we believe that the true value in SaaS can only be derived from ERPs that are true SaaS. Others are simply old managed services arrangements that have been dressed up differently but bring no additional value. Going back to our culture of innovation and our basic technology strategy, ERP is not our first rodeo with SaaS. In 2009, we were the first government to implement our email and calendaring in the cloud, and just this last year, we implemented our City Council agenda publications in the cloud with Novus. This year, we'll be implementing both human capital management and financials with Workday. Our selection criteria were fairly simple, and that was that both financials and human capital management must be present. In addition, we wanted a grants management process within financial. We did not believe that we would appreciably improve our situation implementing a traditional ERP, so true SaaS was our requirement to maintain our investment with a fairly level subscription rate that would keep us current while reducing our recurring costs. We used a bifurcated TCO method that evaluated the one-time costs separately from recurring costs. This was because the one-time costs were being funded differently than the recurring costs. Our target for TCO was that one-time costs must be covered by our excess funds from our last fiscal year, and that recurring costs must be no more than our current expenditures for ERP in the city. How we were introduced to Workday was through a Workday partner, and after we were introduced to it, we began to become excited. We had not found any product in any of our evaluation, which we had been evaluating for about 2.5 years, that that met our economic requirements for replacing our current system. We researched Workday very, very thoroughly and evaluated all the available information, including online webinars, technical documents, and features descriptions. And then we invited Workday in to our city for demonstrations, and we concluded that Workday was such that we were willing to accept the product without a specific requirements definition, really the opposite of the approach that Pierce County took. After all, I think what we considered was that we have a fairly short, simple list of what we absolutely have to do. That includes hire and terminate people, administer benefits, issue checks for payroll and accounts payable, create and control a budget, and get a clean audit opinion at the end of the year. For us, the rest are procedural details, and because we are home rule, a home rule city, we can make changes to our policy and procedures or our city code to adapt to the embedded processes in Workday, and are committed to do just that. Again, our procurement method was really the opposite of Pierce County as well. We have a unique process within our city code. We have a procurement method in the city code called negotiated procurement. It requires that the city establish that it's not in the city's best interest to have a competitive process. And because there was a very recent competitive process by a public community college with virtually identical requirements accompanied by a third-party evaluation and report on the process, we concluded it was not cost-effective to repeat that process, knowing that the results were virtually certain to be repeated. And so then we went to City Council for approval on November 5th after some fairly detailed briefing for each of the commissioners on our City Council. Because we haven't yet completed our implementation, I cannot cite what benefits we will receive. However, we have very high expectations. We strongly believe that we'll be able to equal or exceed the capability of our current systems when taken as a whole. We will stay current with the application and technological advances from now on. We'll have strong end-user analytics that require no real technical know-how to use, and we'll have more user ownership of the system as a result of the use of configuration activities, not code modifications. Thank you all for your attention to our adventure, and I'll turn this back over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And so you can see there's so many similarities and yet so many interesting differences between the approaches in Pierce County and Orlando. Both work for their jurisdictions, and I look forward to exploring some of the similarities and differences in our Q&A. But our discussion really wouldn't be complete without some perspective from Mike Duffield. Mike is General Manager for Workday's Government and Education. In that role, he's responsible for strategy, development, service delivery, sales, and marketing of Workday solutions for education and government organizations. Mike has a long history and deep understanding of the public sector, having helped launch and build the public sector business unit at PeopleSoft, where he worked for more than 12 years in a variety of business development and sales management roles. He has a bachelor's degree in math and economics from Colgate University. And I think Mike's perspective of seeing so many different organizations and also participating in this uptake of this type of software in government really can help shed some light on these experiences and then how people might apply these to their own jurisdictions. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this subject.
Well, first off, I appreciate it, and I echo the sentiments that you've heard from Gary, Linda, and Rebecca. I think it's great insight to their very practical experiences that they're having, and certainly I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. I'm going to highlight the discussion into three areas, and just looking at what is happening in the landscape of enterprise software, why there is an impetus and a shift to the cloud, and then some of the key takeaways. You've heard some of the value drivers from both Pierce and the City of Orlando, but I'll extrapolate on a few of those, and then that'll drive us towards the Q&A. So, one of the things that we have is the opportunity to start with a clean sheet of paper. Workday started in 2005 and had the ability to really think about the technologies that were available at that time versus taking and continuing to wrap and layer technology on an older ERP model. The genesis of Workday comes from prior companies. Our DNA at our leadership comes from the Information Associates that Dave Duffield founded in the 70s, Integral Systems in the 80s, a company called PeopleSoft in the 90s and early 2000s, and then Workday. Through the years, we have added both world-class employees that have voted us the best place to work, as well as some of the capabilities in HR, benefits, financials, payroll, et cetera. You see a number of the logos and awards conferred. Again, we're most proud of a very near perfect customer referenceability rating and being one of the best places to work. I think it's important to think about where Workday is, but it's also it's a good contrast to look back to see what it isn't and where we've come from. And so a nostalgic slide for you all to think about the 80s. But most of the ERP environments that are in cities and counties and state agencies and municipalities have their genesis in the 80s. And the DNA and the business logic and data model of these systems and the technologies used to create it were in 1980. And the thing to take away from this is that a lot has changed. When you look at both time and the application of technology across those last 25, 30 years, it really is profoundly different. The one takeaway I'll leave you with is that the cost of a gigabyte of memory in 1980 was $250,000. And so when these ERP systems, and PeopleSoft, where I was from, was no different, is we organized and developed at the core of the system a very efficient use of that precious commodity, that memory. And as such, it bifurcated information into lots of little compartmentalized tables and tucked them away in a database so they could be referred to and responded to in a very efficient way, again, taking advantage of that very precious commodity, that expensive gigabyte of memory. Well, now we just don't have that issue. That same gigabyte of memory is pennies on the dollar. And as such, you see a profoundly different experience with these enterprise systems. And it's just, again, one takeaway that technology and time certainly has an impact on what is available. And if you apply that same chronology, that same time horizon over other technology innovations, you can see that the cell phone has migrated. Even since I built this slide, 4 iterations of the iPhone have emerged. The film industry has been transformed. I grew up in Rochester, New York, and Kodak was a Fortune 50 company. It is now bankrupt because it could not keep up with the digitized element in the migration of technology. The music industry is transformed. You're seeing it pervasively across the board. And this same impact is being felt across the constructs of administrative computing. And as I mentioned, and you go back into the Dave Duffield and some of the prior generations of technologies and companies that he's managed, the mainframe era yielded to the client-server wave of computing some 20, 25 years ago. And that wave of computing, that premise-based, highly customized client-server environment, that ERP environment that most of the jurisdictions manage in some capacity, is yielding into the cloud. And I think it's important to think about that shift to the cloud. And cloud computing is by no means a shrinking violet. It is a growing and emerging set of economic realities. Cloud computing will grow to nearly $150 billion, and you can see some of the data points there. But as you kind of think about this transition from premise to the cloud, a lot of the enterprise applications started with Salesforce. And if you think just a year or two ago, half of all that new software in that industry is deployed into the cloud. So, very quick transition. As you move forward and we think about the context of HCM and financials, we're seeing, a lot of uptake, albeit commercially in higher education, around, what you're seeing with Pierce and the City of Orlando in county, in city, and state governments, with, very industry-specific applications relevant for you. How this looks out in the value chain, I'm going to just spend 2 minutes on just looking at the transition. $78 billion is the investment that is being made in the application software value chain, as it were, the administrative ERP market. The bottom in blue is software, the red consulting, the green infrastructure, the gray is infrastructure operations and application support. And what you see in this transition to the cloud is that the application to support for applications gets reduced by about 75%. Since we are providing the care, love, and feeding, the application support element drops pretty precipitously. The infrastructure operation drops 85%. The infrastructure requirements drop 75%, and this is the customer's benefit. You're getting significant cost savings in this. The consulting drops nearly two-thirds to 67% to be able to implement and maintain these systems. The software costs really are straightforward and transferable, but the real benefit is that the ongoing cost to maintain, historically associated with consulting, is driven into the software. Since we're doing all of the updates and patches and fixes and upgrades, you don't need to do that, and that's where the customer's real benefit is, and that's the disruptive element that the cloud brings into the enterprise market. And the biggest winners are you, the customer, and the value that you get from what the cloud can do. Some of these things that I've highlighted in this side are of IT value. Patches, fixes, upgrades, availability, backup, storage, provisions, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that Workday is world-class at that have historically required dollars and many dollars in some cases, resources, for you to manage those things on-premise. And one of the other results is that you get a repatriating of your IT budget and resources to focus on more strategic initiatives. I think Linda said it best, that the reallocation of that IT effort appears to more strategic things than patch fixing a payroll system or applying tax codes. Those are things that, again, Workday does to free up your folks. The other value you get is improved efficiency. So this is from APQC looking at a study of the delivery of the HR function per employee. And you can see the cost of that on average and moving towards best in class. So moving from average to best in class across this portfolio of administrative function generate a significant savings and value creation. So you can see two highlights from your peers in education as to the value that they're seeing in being able to, again, move towards best in class. The other value is just significantly lower operating costs. Workday requires a third the resources and a third the cost of traditional systems, so that you're able to, again, recapture and redirect some of those, very precious resources and dollars to more mission-critical functions in the county or in the city. Another value of the cloud is pace of innovation. I think you heard Rebecca say, the opportunity to stay current. There is a snowballing effect of not staying current, and that compounds itself every iteration, every update, from your current provider or from historical providers. With Workday, you're always current. And each of these releases that I mentioned here are substantive deliverables. And whether in the latest releases being grant management or time tracking or onboarding or talent planning, in the realm of each one of these releases is profoundly important opportunities for you to take on new features and functions. All of these updates are delivered, turned off, so that there is minimal operational disruption, but it gives you an opportunity, again, to stay current with all the latest innovations that are available. This is a slide from Forrester. In the time horizon from when we came on into the marketplace in 2007 and 2008 till now, we've lapped the field. And so we're looked at as a leader in the marketplace. One of the key reasons, and I think you heard Linda highlight it, the user interface. This could be you. And so, a very happy set of users. And I'll just take you through a few things. The consumer internet look and feel, it's easy to use. It reduces the overhead, redundancies, and the dependence on paper. People are very comfortable with the internet, and it has a very, intuitive look and feel. The ability to see icons and hyperlinks and organizational charts and bringing reporting and business intelligence into the hands of the community and being able to see the things that are very relevant to reward, attract, align your strategic resources, as well as give the relevant information to be able to help your community. All of the things that you see in the browser are all available in mobile devices. And whether that be on an iOS device like an iPad or an iPhone or HTML5 device like Google or Samsung or BlackBerry, the mobile devices that are proliferating around the administrative portfolio are able to be leveraged directly with Workday. The other value that I think was highlighted by Linda is a community, and we call it the power of one. All users of Workday are on the exact same release of Workday. And that provides a real social platform for sharing. And so integration templates, reports, business processes and best practices, data migration scripts, usage patterns can all be shared because all customers are leveraging the exact same version of Workday at the exact same time. And so it brings profound efficiencies into the user community to drive down their overall cost of ownership. And to give you a perspective on some of the customers in the industries that we service, a number of them are commercial. So you'll find a lot of innovation coming from service industries, technology companies, financial service companies, manufacturing organizations, healthcare organizations, or other, retail, entertainment, and as you can see, some of the logos therein. I think where we're going to derive a very significant benefit, though, is collaborating amongst each other within the public sector. We have a unique DNA. And the experiences that Gary and Linda have at Pierce County and Rebecca has at City of Orlando are directly applicable. If you have similar systems of record that you're migrating from, what costs the City of Orlando $1 will cost you 50 cents on the dollar. If you have similar requirements for fire and police, that the Pierce County elements are able to be implemented and leveraged, you have direct applicability into your county or your city for similar requirements. And again, you can see some of our brethren in higher education and nonprofit organizations as they explore more opportunities for research and grant dollars that will become available to cities and counties. While not a direct historical source of revenue, it becomes an alternative source of revenue as we begin to explore those opportunities. And again, Workday has those capabilities to do that. So I'm thrilled to have given you a snapshot of the Workday environment. I think it's important that you hear from your peers. So I'm going to pause here, allow the Q&A section to commence. I think one thing I will leave you with is where you can see more if you are interested in Workday. We do have a monthly webcast focused on our friends in government and education that you can register for on the Workday.com website. The next scheduled session is in a few weeks. And clearly there are data and white papers, testimonials, and access to a tremendous amount of materials that will be relevant to you on the Workday.com website. So with that, thank you for the opportunity, and I'll transition back to our moderator.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. And, such amazing perspectives, I think, from Pierce County, from Orlando, but also from you, Mike, about how this fits into the development of the industry and where this falls and how this is the natural and proper evolution of what we're seeing based on developments in technology. So there's a number of great questions that have already come in. Just to refresh folks, if you haven't had a chance to ask a question yet, we do want this to be interactive. You can type your question into the Ask a Question text area next to the video window and then click Submit. One of the most common questions so far has been about getting access to these materials. You'll get an email to the email address you used to register that'll have a link to the full archive and the slides and materials here as well. So if you'd like to share those with a colleague or if you'd just like to refer to them yourselves, you're welcome to do that. So feel free to go ahead and ask a question if you have one that strikes you. The first one we've got here is for Rebecca. Rebecca, what part did analytics play in your decision-making process?
Well, I think analytics were huge for us. We view our current systems that we use for our administrative processes as really drawing a vacuum from the city. In other words, we do a lot of work, we put a lot of information out, but not very much information comes back to us. Usually if we have to have some kind of a report, we have to go to a more technical individual to do that report. The onboard contextual analytics that Workday offers provides us an ability to really put the power of access to the data in the hands of the end users. Now we've said for 20 years we were doing that, But the practical side of that is that that's a tool, those tools that we've had in the past have to be something that you use every day. So if you need information and you don't need it every day, it's very hard for you to produce it using, the various kinds of business intelligence tools that we've had up to now. But when we look at the Workday analytics, those analytics are really contextual. And so the system is actually anticipating what some of those analytic needs are going to be and produces that as an individual is interacting with the system. We see that as a major, if not, I'm sure it's in the top 3 issues that we were trying to resolve, because we feel like we spend so much time and money gathering information and recording it, and not very much comes out of that system to assist us in our decision making and the management of our city.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Here's a question from Colin. I'll pose this first to Gary and Linda from Pierce County, but then Rebecca, you may want to weigh in as well. At some level, and I think the specifics of this probably won't be as relevant from one place to the next, but how do you think about the expected transition cost and time frame from traditional services to the cloud? And again, the specific prices for your jurisdiction versus another's may not be comparable, but it would be interesting to understand how you think of that and how you could advise folks about that transition.
This is Gary, and as I indicated in earlier part of the presentation, we did an evaluation of what our current costs are for the operation of our legacy systems, did an estimate of what our conversion costs are, and then look forward to having a reduction in those costs as we move forward with software as a solution service. We worked in order to identify transition costs associated with staffing that we needed to allocate to the project as we're in design and implementation, architecture implementation, and had that identified in that earlier slide that I referenced. Also noted on that slide, we expect after implementation of this solution that we'll have savings estimated to be around $1.77 million per year.
This is Linda. I think in the transition costs, of course, it is always based on schedule. And one of the factors that we evaluated when we looked at vendors was what their implementation schedule was. And we did a really deep dive on that with our vendors. And what we found is that with Workday, we would be implemented in a year and we would be operational in a year. And with one of the vendors we looked at, and we're not going to mention any names, but we were looking at almost an 18-month window on the implementation, and then they were going to be requiring us to go through an upgrade of 3 or 4 months before we went live to bring us up to the most current version, because these projects do take a while to do that transition. So we certainly wanted to not end up at the end of the year and find that we had to do a whole new upgrade, but with some software systems that is necessary, and that really factored into our decision making.
Excellent.
This is Rebecca. I think that our experience was. I guess I'll put it this way. We feel like we're in the middle of the ocean in a ship that's sinking. So our cost to be rescued from where we are just needed to be affordable, and that was really where we were coming from. But in looking at it, because our city budget has shrunk the extent that it has over the last 5 years, we don't have extra people to implement a new system. We can't peel people off from their jobs without replacing them. So about $1 million of our $6 million implementation cost was to provide backfill for all of our mainline individuals who would be working on the project. And we thought that was important to let them own it, first of all, but secondly, gain all of the benefit of understanding the way that you set the system up, all of the configuration activities, to be deeply involved in that so that they came away as experts in the system, because we want the experts to be in the user community, not in our technology community. And so, we feel like that in the investment that we would make in in that, as well as the investment that we intend to make in training, is incredibly important. From the perspective of consulting, we were committed to a full new look at our business processes because we don't believe that we're doing things dramatically better than anyone else, and we felt that a good hard look at that, supported by the various experts who could help us to go through that, was money well spent. We believe that the $6 million that we're implementing is also a one-time cost. And as we move forward through new releases and such, we will have the expertise on staff to be able to get through those, and we won't have 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road a significant re-implementation effort with a new release as we would with a traditional ERP.
Excellent. Great perspectives, and appreciate the detail there as well. There's a couple questions about documents. Can we get copies of RFPs or documents that y'all used in your different procurement processes? What we'll do with those is we'll follow up with our speakers here, see if there's any documents they can share, and if they are, we'll try to include those with the emails that go back out to you. There probably are also some stuff on their websites as well that you can check out. But back to questions, we've got one here for Mike. Mike, what's the Workday update schedule? You mentioned this kind of updates as opposed to passing out CDs with new releases. What's that update schedule like, and how does that work?
Sure. So we have currently this calendar year 3 planned updates every 120 days. They're posted well in advance. We try to do them in non-innocuous days, so areas where there's some potential downtime in the operations. We deliver a sandbox of all the new capabilities about 6-8 weeks in advance of the cutover, and the cutover usually is a day or two over a weekend with minimal effort. The effort is really spent around regression testing on some integrations and reports. Again, as I mentioned before, the new capabilities are delivered turned off, so it's not a disruptive environment. And it varies as the uptake of the new features depending on the time frame, the calendar year, the fiscal year, and what is important to each individual customer. So 3 times a year, that'll move towards more of a continuous model. And again, it's very straightforward from the perspective of the customer because we're doing all of the technical shifts, and you have a line of sight with a sandbox 6 to 8 weeks in advance. And on top of that, at the community that I mentioned before, I would say more than half of the new features and functions are all a direct result of the voting community. We have something called the brainstorm. So they will vote and decide kind of what is the priority of these new features that arrive into the application. And all the user notes and testing and training and availability of these things is available on the community well in advance of the upgrade. So that, I think, gives that description.
Excellent. So here's a question actually that's posed to both Pierce County and Orlando. So let's start with Rebecca, and then when you finish, Gary and Linda, if you'd like to weigh in on it. How would you rate or describe the reception of the cloud services inside your IT departments? So on the scale from mildly amused to vehemently opposed to very happy, how would you say IT views your move to the cloud?
This cloud strategy emanated from our technology organization, and they embrace it wholeheartedly and have exceptional enthusiasm for moving to this. I will say that I think that part of that is a result of this being our 3rd time to move a system to the cloud. I think that the threat of loss of job and such, is gone. So that's really not a part of our landscape in Orlando. And what we see is that their jobs are actually being enriched. And I think that when you're dealing with technology people, their ability to learn new things, the openings that they have to learn new things are viewed as very, very valuable. So they are probably our most enthusiastic people here at the city, although all of us are very enthusiastic, but they're pretty much over the top.
Great. Gary and Linda, what are your thoughts?
I've just printed out a list this morning. We have 43 software as a service or infrastructure as a service applications in the county, everything from small to large. I agree that our staff is very excited about this technology and see it as a way to grow their skills, but we also see this as a way to increase our capacity in technology and what we have deployed in the county without a corresponding high cost of adding new staff. So our staff, as we've all talked about, is already busy on large projects, maybe mission critical projects, and we use software as a service to actually expand our capacity while keeping the same number of staff.
Great. Wonderful perspectives. We've got a number of questions that are still here. We're back up at the top of the hour, so I think what we'll have to do is try to respond to some of the folks offline. We've got your information, so we'll check back with you individually. I'm going to pose one more question, if we can stretch the time a little bit, to all of our panelists, which is, what are your thoughts on security? Maybe we'll start with Pierce County. How does security kind of mix into the equation here?
Well, it's really very straightforward. I think a lot of people use security as a bullet to try to shoot SaaS technology, but it really is very, very straightforward, and Workday uses SAML, which is the most secure way to do these sorts of connections, and we're familiar with that implementation. It hasn't been a problem at all.
Great.
From Orlando's perspective, we agree. We did a very, very thorough evaluation of security, and we are absolutely satisfied with everything that we've seen.
Great. Mike, any thoughts on security or any other final thoughts as we wrap up?
I think everyone's going to look to security as a binary element. We encourage all of the prospective buyers to go very deep and assess the capabilities. We're world class at it. Again, we have a robust service. When you think of the other logos across those other industries, they have diverse and depth in their operations globally. And when you look at those global operations and the access points, they have assessed Workday up, down, left, and right, and we pass with flying colors. So security is something we take very seriously. It's the lifeblood of what we provide, and we would certainly encourage anyone to go out to the website or engage us directly in that discussion.
Great. And certainly from our perspective, at governing, you've got a security challenge, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. So we're always relying on partners and working on this stuff ourselves. So great perspectives here. I'm sorry to the folks we weren't able to get to. If we weren't able to get to your question, we will do our best to follow up with you offline. We appreciate everyone tuning in here today. Gary, Linda, Rebecca, Mike, thank you very much from your perspectives as speakers for providing this information, taking your time out to share these best practices with folks, especially at this exciting stage of the process that you're in. Thanks again to Workday for underwriting this event and helping to bring this conversation together. This is definitely, from the very large number of attendees and excitement out there, this is a timely topic and something that really can benefit a lot of organizations out there. Many of us are in the position, as Rebecca said, of feeling like we're drowning out there in the ocean, and this just might be the life preserver that we need to get our organizations back on their fiscal and financial feet. So thank you very much to everyone. We hope that you will check out other events at governing.com and join us again soon. And best of luck implementing these things in your own organizations. Bye-bye.